Do that.
No, unless I can just
Yeah,
want
you
to.
can, we can.
No.
All right.
Okay, I call to order the committee of the whole meeting at 7:00 PM on Thursday, the 1st of December, 2022, in the boardroom of Oak Park and River Forest High School, and ask for a roll call, please.
Ms. Spivey,
Here,
Dr. Maharaj, Mr. Argan,
Front and center.
Mr. Henry,
Here, if you said my name.
Mr. Mancheri,
Here.
Ms. Harris, and Mr. Coffey.
Here. I move to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, to dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district and independent contractors and specific volunteers, including hearing testimony of a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. However, meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the local government wage increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with Act ILCS 120/2. Collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. May I please have a second?
Second.
And a roll call.
Dr. Maharaj, Mr. Argan,
Yes.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Mancheri,
Yes.
Ms. Spivey,
yes.
and Mr. Coffey.
Yes. So we will now move to closed session. Live? Okay, we are resuming open session and our next order of business is public comments. Lisa, we have
Public comment.
no public comments of any kind.
No, second.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make comments that has not signed up for comments? Is there anyone who would like to comment about public comment? Okay, we will then move on to our next order of business, which is approval of the minutes. So I move to approve the November 3rd, 2022 Committee of the Whole minutes as presented. Are there any corrections or adjustments that need to be made? Okay, may I have a second on the motion? Second. And all in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The notes are approved. Our next order of business is it's backwards. What am I looking at? It's finance. Just labeled differently.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. And Dr. Johnson, would you like to take the ball?
Yeah, absolutely. So our first item under finance is the Cardonics master schedule contract. This is coming at Dr. Fiorenza and Dr. Lamb. I believe Dr. Lamb was going to try to get online tonight. She is out of state in a conference right now, so she may not have success zooming in tonight. I know it was a question tomorrow. But in lieu of Dr. Lamb coming in, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Fiorenza.
Okay, so we are presenting a contract for Cardonics, which is a master schedule builder. Our current system produces a master schedule on the first pass with about 20 to 25% of the student population having conflicts in their schedule. What that means is 25% of the student body ends up with a conflict that then Dr. Lamb, the registrar who helps, and the counselors have an extensive amount of work to do to clear all of those conflicts. It might involve moving the whole class. It might involve moving individual students, but it is all done by hand. Unfortunately, our Skyward program requires that we run the schedule with all of the students in it, lock it, look for the conflicts. Once we see the conflicts, hand move things, unlock it, rerun it. So as you can see or hear, that's a number of steps just at the first pass. Typically, we hope by June to be down to less than 7% conflicts, but it requires the person who does it, myself, who did it for 2 years previously, to shut down pretty much everything I'm doing to resolve these conflicts. The Cardonics contract and tool will allow the master schedule to be run, and they have an error rate on the first pass of less than 7%. So it will be much more efficient. It will help us ensure that the FTE that we request or utilize is more accurate sooner. And it will also allow counselors to do other things other than individually hand schedule 200 kids over the summer. And it will also get accurate schedules in the hands of our students much sooner. So that's the Cardonics contract that we are asking for approval at the next board meeting.
Question.
Please.
And this, I think Chris is on, right? This might be more of a question for Chris, but presumably it's going to, are students identified by name as well as student ID number, or? I'm just concerned about what their security measures are to make sure that student data is safeguarded.
Yeah, and if you see on the appendix in the documentation that Dr. Lamb and Dr. Fiorenza provided, there was a thorough investigation of a variety of points in order to come to this vendor, and it included requirements for SOPA. The other two vendors didn't have it. We worked with this vendor to ensure that we had that in advance. So they are compliant with SOPA. And they also meet the more strict European requirements on security as well. So we're pretty confident that this vendor is taking it seriously when it comes to student security.
And how long will it take to implement the software? Like, will we have it by, I'm assuming we have it by the end of the school year to use?
Our intent is to have it by January to use.
Yeah.
Dr. Lamb and her team will be ready to start once the freshman registration finishes, which is 19th of January, around there.
So, I think this is what I heard is that by implementing this software and having a much more efficient first go at scheduling, that will give you well ahead of time, early in the process, a better idea of what FTE is needed. Will that?
Yes,
So,
among other
because
things,
I noticed,
that's
you
one
know,
of them. Yeah.
year after year, there's always that couple extra FTEs or half or quarter for classes in the
Correct.
fall that is needed. And that will help make this much more efficient in terms of focusing in on that.
Absolutely. Currently, Skyward is not real time and live. It's, run it, lock it down, run it again. Cardonics will see live as students are coming in. Dr. Lang will be able to see where the bulk of students are conflicting, and she'll actually be able to move a class in the moment as things are rolling in, which is not something we can do with Skyward.
Thank you. And I want to add one thing as an additional answer to that, not about cardonics specifically, as Dr. Fiorenza just said, but if you think about some of the shifts that we've had kind of enrollment, we've seen some needs even this fall, as you pointed out, because we realized that 10 kids came in with this specific need in this specific grade level, and that's caused us to increase FTE in an area. That, of course, could and would still happen down the road, as it would for any school district. This won't stop that you have new kids coming in that change your needs, but this will allow us to be more nimble in this process.
Well, yeah, that was.
Yeah, so we're gonna get-
Is it give us more efficient earlier
absolutely. But it's got-
understanding of what our FTE needs will be?
on the front end, if things change, if we get transfers, move-ins, obviously we might need to come back to the board, but this is gonna be much more efficient on the front end.
Two things. So it sounds like it also frees up some capacity for you where you're not have to spin your wheels messing around with the first hit at the
Correct.
conflict resolution, right?
Correct.
Which allows you to focus on, your job, which would be great. And I think that's all good. I want to express my appreciation for having this reported out in accordance with policy 46. I've been kind of a stickler on that. And
Dr. Lang did a nice job.
I really do. And I think that this is helpful, right? Because the board sees what you're doing. My only question on that is the evaluation tool. It seems to just have one primary metric, and that is comparing the conflict percentage. And so I would assume that once you're actually utilizing the product, you'll have a more complex evaluative metric to ensure that it doesn't have a lot of downtime, the support is there.
Right.
So I'm going to be in favor of this, but I would like to know maybe at just a future meeting what the final evaluation matrix will be. But I appreciate having a first stab at it.
Yeah, can I actually, for the sake now of the policy and not necessarily cardonics, and that's a clarifying question, just so for better understanding. So when we're taking a look at the table earlier on in that memo that compares cardonics to quick schools and USA schedule, right? And others that do that, those are some of the criteria that
For selection.
for selection, and then how I would imagine and how well it
Efficacy,
does those things.
Right, would be
Correct.
the efficacy matrix.
There we go.
Yeah. I agree, Greg. But really, really nicely,
Yeah.
really happy, and I think that this is a great way to introduce any sort of contract with a proposed vendor, right? It gives us at the board structure and understanding. It eliminates a lot of the silly questions, gets us out of the business of micromanaging.
Yeah.
Let you do your job.
Yeah, Dr.
Well
Lamb and Christine did a very nice job of working with all this information and putting it together in a way that I think it's easily read and understood.
I agree. That was the hope of the policy when we worked on it. I also want to thank Sarah for her input on that policy. We worked on that way back when, and Tom, you were part of that process too, so.
My. For any other question, my question,
Oh, could be better than
Oh. okay, good, thank you. Kareem, please.
Yeah, just a quick question. I also want to commend you for how you presented it. It's easy. I have very little questions or comments, but one question I had is that 30,000, that's the annual license fee? Or is it a one-time fee plus a license fee, which is different?
So I do see that Dr. Lamb has been able to join us
Oh, great.
from her conference, so I'm gonna let her speak to that. Hi, Dr. Lamb.
Hi, thank you. I was joined in but not set as a participant yet. So can you repeat your question one more time?
The $30,000, is that an annual license fee or is that a one-time fee and there's a different license fee after that?
So this is a one-time license fee. And I mean, it's just for 1 year as we gauge whether or not we want to continue with Cardonics.
Right, but so year 2 and 3, is there a reduced fee if we continue? I mean, I just want to understand what it look like long-term if we continue with this program.
Yes, there is a reduced fee.
Okay, second question, in comparison to what we pay for Skyward or what other vendors are, is it the same, less, more? Is it around the same ballpark as far as what we're paying for this license fee?
I don't know the costs for Skyward. Cardonics and Skyward are different since Skyward is our student information system and this is a master scheduler. I don't know, Chris, do you know the cost of Skyward?
Yeah, we'd be paying for Skyward, regardless of whether we needed to do work or not. But so there was a drastic difference between the prices in these vendors, and there was a drastic difference in what they could do. The ability to, I've seen folks doing this work for quite a while. Taking over conference rooms and having post-it notes up on boards in order to figure this out. It's really needed an algorithm like Cardonics is built in order to do it correctly. I haven't seen anything like Cardonics yet. It's kind of exciting to see this come in because the job of what it's doing is pretty intense. And it does take up quite a bit of bandwidth that will be better spent elsewhere.
Okay, so it's in addition to Skyward, but also the opportunity gain is spend less man hours on other items that Cardonics can do. So it's actually cheaper.
Exactly.
In essence, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I have a clarifying question on that discussion because there was reference to multi-years, et cetera. I just want, this is 1 year.
This is a 1-year contract.
And there's nothing, I didn't see, there's nothing on anything beyond 1 year.
No, we want this for 1 year.
Okay, I just
We'll
want
see
to
how
make
it
sure.
works, and if they can hold up their end, we'll evaluate it using our tool, and then we'll come forward.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have a clarifying question. to
Please.
your question. Chris, do you know what the is there, so I'm assuming there's an implementation fee and a subscription fee, which is how subsequent years will be cheaper because the implementation fee is not included.
I didn't analyze the cost part of it to that extent. I was more involved in the technical, whether it was going to plug in correctly, basically. Julie, do you have a sense of what the differentiation was between the implementation and the licensing?
No, I don't have that, but I can get that from Cardonics.
Okay.
We can include that in.
I mean, because there could be a significant drop off if a
Right.
chunk of that's implementation.
We can absolutely include that in end of week notes once we get that.
Well, We can put it in the memo 2 weeks from now.
But for the it's being coming back in 2 weeks, yes.
Absolutely.
So my, my question is, as I read the materials, one, the way you define the way we do scheduling sounds familiar. It seems like the way the world schedules, the accounting, but the, the number of customers that they have is pretty limited, correct? So, I mean, I think it said there was
One in Illinois.
one in Illinois. So, what does everyone else do? And,
Suffer.
Suffer?
It's a common issue in just about every district I've talked to. To have a tool that does this effectively. And it does have a big impact on kids when you've got those conflicts. It moves their schedules around, it causes confusion. It's a common district problem.
So I wanted to clarify that Cardonics is new to Illinois. And that's why I expanded my search outside of Illinois. I did speak with Waukegan School District that uses Cardonics, and I was able to find another district within the Midwest, but they are based in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I get kind of leery about it, and being the beta child on something, but that's just my 2 cents.
I was just gonna say that while we've hit quite a bit on the efficiency needed for the staff, and yes, the conflicts for the students, but this really is a significant impact on students. Students sometimes request certain classes that then they can't get because of these conflicts. Classes end up maybe not running or being closed when maybe if we had less conflicts on the front end, we would be able to offer more of the options for our students. So I don't disagree with you that it is a little bit, there is a level of risk, I suppose, but the payoff for our students might be worth the attempt.
Well, it seems like especially if the initial delta is coming out with a differential of conflicts between 20 some odd percent and 7% to begin with. I mean, that's an amazing differential to front end. Even in the smaller district I was worked at before, our conflicts in the scheduling at the middle school were in the 15 to 20% at the beginning range. And it's funny, was it Chris that said the room closed with the post? Yeah, that's exactly how it's resolved, and it sucks. It's a time suck. So finding a way to make that more efficient and free you up to do what you should be doing, I think is great.
Okay. Any other questions? So this will be returning for approval on the 15th of December with the additional
Correct.
information on what multi-year,
Yes.
what the
Costs
what
after
it
1
would
year.
look like if we had favorable experience and success in our demo year.
Yes, we'll take care of that.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, next up, last item in finance is our annual, very exciting meet to have a contract for prom. And Linda Parker is coming up. We're having a continuation here of some work we've done in the past. So anyway, Linda Parker is up, excuse me, and also Angela Hawkins is up, our student activities coordinator as well, who will play a lead role in securing this contract. So go ahead.
Thank you. Best part about working in high schools is 20+ years of prom. It's great. It's fun. It's fun. This is the prom contract for the current school year that's going to be coming forth. May 20th is the date. As you remember, we had 2 canceled years of prom because of the pandemic. We were at the Marriott last year, and they had renewed the amount they allowed us to pay for each year that we were unable to go. When we went to the Marriott this year, it was not the experience that for the past class was not the experience we had hoped it would be. And so we did some more searching and decided on the Hyatt for that. And so Angie was involved in that process.
Yep, so we would like to return to the Hyatt, which is the location of prom for the previous, I believe, 15 years. We have a guarantee of 62,400. And that's what we're looking at. Thank you. That's what we're looking to have approved, is to move it back to the Hyatt and the Hyatt Regency, it's 62,400 for a minimum guarantee.
And we should point out, as always, that this is nothing that we are asking to come from the district office. Problems like that is paid for by our students.
Yeah. Yep.
And the ticket sales associated with it.
And the ticket will stay the same price that it was last year. There's no increase in cost to our students.
Questions? Seeing none. You've answered all our questions, and this will come before the board in 14 days. A fortnight, is that correct?
Yeah.
With that's right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We now shift to our policy section, and the first agenda item is for review. Dr. Johnson, will you?
Yeah. I'm gonna do a quick introduction on this because this item is on here at board member Marturi's request. I think it was at our last meeting, maybe 2 weeks ago. Rather than just giving the policy as I think it was originally requested, I couldn't resist the opportunity to editorialize slightly, so I took it. And let me just say that the policy exists. This is a policy that is relatively new to the district in this form. So back in April of 21, this was significantly amended, making it in many ways kind of unique to OPRF, but not entirely unique to OPRF. And so the memo here highlights 3 sections of the policy, and I'm just going to really quickly draw attention to those 3 kind of categories of the policy before I just opened up the conversation. That was first. There's this quality assurance component of the policy. I'm not going to read it verbatim. You don't go into the details of it. You see it in the memo. But I just want to point out that is the language that's universal. If you go to any other school district, for the most part in the state of Illinois, you take a look at policy 615, that's the language that you're going to see. That language is absolutely somewhat outdated right now for the state. When I've talked to folks in Westport, I think I mentioned in the policy in the memo here that I've reached out to see, how can we revise this policy? They're not quite ready to revise the policy, so the old language remains intact. We don't have that language that Westport has been given the guidance to kind of recommend to us to make those changes. So it remains as it is, and it detailed there. The second part is the reporting on attaining equity goals. And the boards will likely recall that last December, 16th, I think was the date when we presented the State of the District presentation to the board. The introduction and then the data that was shared therein referenced policy 615. And what it was really doing there is specifically referencing this middle section. The reporting on attaining the equity goals. There are a number of metrics that are listed here that are covered by the state's summative designation process, the state's accountability process for all public schools. But there are also some other metrics that are added in addition to that. And those not only were in the report, of course, a year ago, but they will be in our report next board meeting in 2 weeks. So that's really that information there from a high level. And the last section is the using evidence-based practices to attain excellent and equitable educational outcomes. And this is really talking about project or initiative-specific ways to rely on evidence-based practices to ensure that we are pursuing equitable excellence in our programming with our students here. And I've broken that policy down in kind of a bulleted way there for kind of an easier digestion and discussion. And what we will do, what we've committed to, is similar to what we did a year ago. We will calendar out, and we will share that list in 2 weeks from now of those initiatives, those programs that we are able to anticipate at this point within the next calendar year, we will be able to provide the information that's required in policy 615, right? And I just want to say that although it's not explicitly noted in the policy, I think a very useful tool that is at our fingertips now, once our procedures have been developed, is a racial equity analysis tool, which some have referred to in the community internally as the REIT. And that is a lens that helps us to analyze the initiatives and the programs that we're putting in place. And so when we are bringing the programs forward that apply to 615 throughout the next calendar year, those items that are going to be listed in the State of the District presentation this coming this coming regular meeting later in December, we will utilize the REIT, right, to analyze those and to help our analysis of what those programs offer our kids. So with that said, I've listed some next steps that are really baked into what I've just shared, and I think I'll pause there and open it up for discussion.
Yeah, I wanna talk a little bit about the genesis of this. As part of the policy committee, this was a major effort that we did a couple of years ago in collaboration with the administration. And I think for the new board, first I think Sarah deeply involved again, Tom deeply involved, and again, we were sending drafts back and forth. What we wanted to do was eliminate a lot of the dysfunction or different expectations, failure to meet expectations when different educational initiatives were brought to the board to address specifically eliminating the statistically meaningful differentials we have by race, ethnicity, et cetera, in outcomes. And these are unique to the district. I want to point that out. While the first part of this policy is something that every school district in the state has, the next two parts were really worked out in collaboration with the administration so that everyone understood very clearly what we were trying to accomplish as a district from an equity standpoint, what we wanted to see measured from an equity standpoint, and what we wanted to hear at the board level when we were talking with the administration about the composition of different initiatives brought to the board to actually make a differential in these areas. So I want, in particular, our new board members who weren't around for this, if you look at it, we made it very clear that the goals of the district from an equity standpoint are eliminating these statistically meaningful differentials along every measurable outcome we could think of that mattered from a student standpoint, student achievement standpoint. And we worked with the administration on coming up with the list and identifying the list. And so that's an informational piece that allows the board over time to continue to monitor in a really meaningful way whether or not progress is being made. And it allows us to understand where it isn't being made and to then work with the administration on reforming practice so that we can start moving the ball forward. So that was a big step forward. And it got everyone on the same page for how we were going to monitor, how we were going to handle our job at the board level of oversight. But then when you look at the next part about the new initiatives, and when I first got involved with D200, I was still on the board at D90, and I was part of your climate and culture committee, Sarah, when you chaired it, I think the initial year, maybe even. And the first question I asked, I will not name the administrator who's no longer here, was, well, what have you tried from an equity standpoint in the past? And how effective was it? And why did you stop using it or continue using it? And the answer we got was, we don't track that kind of information here. Well, that was probably not the best answer and not really what you want when you're trying to make a major systems change. And so if you look at the using evidence-based practices, this really came out of a lot of the challenges of the past of, well, this initiative might be good, this one sounds good, this one was stopped, but no one knows why. Here, going forward, if you go through the policy, it makes it very clear. When the administration brings an initiative to the board that is supposed to affect student outcomes and create more equitable, more excellent across the board academic outcomes, there has to be some sort of evidence or research basis behind it, and the administration is gonna tell us at the board what that is. So now we know that the administration is coming to us with practices that are research and evidence-based to address these challenges. That's a great thing. That is something that created some concern in the past, no longer a concern. The second, it also asks the administration to let the board know how this initiative fits in with any new initiative fits in with the overall scheme, so that we know whether or not strategically the different initiatives are working together to move the district forward in attaining the goals that we're going to have measured. Very effective. Third, it's going to allow for the administration to report on whether or not actual progress is being made after these different initiatives are implemented. And if progress is not being made with a specific initiative, the administration is going to review why and come to us and talk about course corrections. So it really clarifies the whole communication process. It gets the administration and the board working collaboratively together, all oars understanding not just the basis behind the initiatives, but what the initiatives are supposed to accomplish, how those initiatives are going to be evaluated internally by the administration, whether or not the initiatives are actually achieving the goals or being implemented in the way with fidelity that will actually lead to better outcomes, and if not, allow for course correction and change. No loss of documentation, understanding comprehensively how the program is going to work, how things fit together strategically. And this is, we are the only district that has this clarity in our equity mission in the state. And the only district that has this sort of framework for a collaborative and I think very positive relationship between the board and the administration, because no matter how good a research-based any initiative is, it's involving people. And whenever people are involved in a process, sometimes things work and sometimes things don't, and some things implementation is maybe not done with fidelity, or maybe the program really doesn't work with our particular needs and we need to readjust. But it allows for that conversation to happen, and it allows for it to happen in a positive and collaborative way. So this was I thought a really, really good exercise in developing a more positive and collaborative relationship between the board and the administration to work towards this common strategic goal we have of being a school district that the whole nation could look to as the paradigm for how you develop a system, an educational system that is equitable for all students attending and excellent for all students attending. That was our goal. That's what went into it. That's why we're doing something different than any other district. But I really wanted the new board members to be familiar with this so that as things go forward, they could refer to this policy and understand when presentations are being made to us, why these presentations are in a certain form, what they should expect to hear, and if they're not hearing what they need to hear based on this, to ask appropriate questions. And so that's all. It was really, this is meant to be informative, but this was a big deal and it took a lot of time to work out. And I do want to thank everyone that was involved in the process. We probably worked on this for 3 or 4 months before we finalized the policy recommendations to bring to the full board.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? I have some, but I thank you for your words, Earl. I guess as I look at the policy and say, kind of, where are we? Just listening to that narrative, your earlier comments is we're starting to see, in my mind, one piece of it, which is for a given initiative, here's the evidence, here's how we're going to evaluate. So that's kind of the tree perspective, looking at the tree. But I want to come back to what Ralph just in summarizing is now the forest, right? Which is how does that initiative fit in? And so that's in my mind where we need to look toward to, right? I think the work we've done in putting together the evidence-based funding financial model allows us to take and look at the initiatives as a whole of where we're putting our resources. So that's the money side, but then the question is, as we look at all of these initiatives, the thing we need to do is, one is when something is brought up the first time, this is what we want to do, but it's looking at the plate, the forest, and saying, okay, here's all the initiatives we have brought forth. These ones are, knocking the ball out of the park. These ones are not, etc. I think that's the age-old frustration is we keep adding, but are you taking away? Are you adjusting? Are you looking at it? So I think the policy does address it, but how do we put it into action? So I think it starts with the one by one. If you start with a new initiative, we're starting to see traction, which is awesome. And it's learning together and understanding what it is that we want. That to me, now we're ready to start thinking about that next step.
Yeah, I want to thanks for that, because that is a piece that is easy to overlook when these things come to the board as an isolated piece, right? And it doesn't matter what we're talking about. Behavior education plan, a big initiative, right, that affects all in the school, but yet it comes as a singular piece. Math curriculum came recently this school year, became a singular piece. How does that fit into the scope? And so we need to do some thinking about that as a team for sure. I'm not suggesting that we have right now some sort of complete response for that, but it is acknowledging that notion in the policy. Why we want to use the state of the district presentation at the end of every calendar year in December to kind of forecast those things in a comprehensive way that we anticipate bringing to the board over the next 12 months in that complete picture that are kind of fitting into our overall picture of what we want to accomplish as a district within this next year. And then 12 months from now, when we're there, not only will we be able to take a look at those metrics that are required by the state, but we'll be able to take a look back at those things that we were trying to put in place to achieve the ends that we want as a district and say, good, all right, we did A, B, C, D, and E, and here's how they kind of fit into that overall view. So I think it's a great conversation for us to have internally, the ones we've already had, and I think it's really healthy for us to have as a around this table. So thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, because it's unique to us, right, and it's new, it's going to take diligence on our end, and to continue to challenge it, right, and do it because we're trying to get the right stride and get the most value out of it. Okay?
And so it's our responsibility as a board to be familiar with it. And to work with the administration on its implementation over time. And I think this has to be a collaborative process. And the only other thing I'm going to say about it, part of what went into the genesis of this and the discussion of this with the administration was the acknowledgement of how difficult systems change is. It's the hardest thing you can do. Yeah. And if you're going to have a comprehensive systems change, then you need to have a process that allows for the board to exercise its appropriate role of oversight. The board can't exercise an appropriate role of oversight unless you know what's supposed to be moving forward. So we identified all that in the reporting, and unless the board actually understands both where initiatives are fitting into the process and working and where they're not. Because the board needs to be fully supportive of the administration when it needs to correct and change course. But we need to understand that as it's developing. And I think this gives us a matrix that will allow that process to move forward in a positive way. I'm excited about it. And I think it will help us attain the ultimate goal, which is where every student is succeeding to that student's abilities and innate characteristics like race, ethnicity, income, culture, etc., will not have an impact on it. It should not have an impact on any student's achievement, and that's really the goal.
Just one final point I want to make, and it's and the fact that you made that last point, and also a few weeks back when we were presenting our metrics and kind of an update on our freshman curriculum, you made what might immediately sound as a opposite point. I think it's really important we understand that they aren't opposite points. These exist collectively together when you're talking about long-term systems change. So when we're talking about taking a look at the forest, as you phrased it, and giving kind of a yearly update on where we are with this work. That's important, but it's not to say that in doing so, we are presenting summative information about all of these initiatives. It is information up through this point with what we're putting in place, whether it's our behavior education plan, whether it's any curriculum initiative that you could name, our efforts to increase our advanced placement success and programming overall for our students, or whatever that case may be. These things are always processes that are in development, and so we need to understand that while we have this as a level of accountability, it's accountability that recognizes the work that exists in process. Okay, so we can't say that enough when we're talking about systems change.
Yeah, I'm gonna emphasize that. That's huge. And really, when you're talking about systems change, we're talking about people, and we're talking about students and the impact on students, right? And so these changes in processes will impact different students in different ways who've gone through different systems before they got here, right? And so you need a full cohort of students to go through. That's a 4-year period. And then the beginning of the next cohort to start having reliable longitudinal data where you could be making reliable assessments. While you always have to track, Greg, I agree, you always have to track it annually. You can't read too much, especially at the beginning of this process, too much into any annual data. I mean, and especially since we haven't had like-kind academic years. I mean, everyone's familiar with the pandemic. And you know, the numbers that we received in the most recent report were better than the prior year's number. And I would guess a little bit might have had to do with the fact that the pandemic didn't affect the classroom and the kids were in the classroom, you know, and we don't know how to sort that out yet. So we really need the reliable longitudinal data to make a fair assessment. You don't want to be declaring mission accomplished early, and you don't want to be declaring failure with a false negative. You got to have that time, and that's really crucial. And then I think that's part of a board's responsibility with the community is to manage expectations on systems change, and to work with the administration to support the administration so that, you know, political pressure doesn't artificially move us away from pursuing appropriate courses.
Okay, thank you. So that one was just for review.
Yep.
So I mean, we're not doing any action on it other than following and continuing to understand. We'll now move to our next policy.
Okay, thanks. So there are the next two items, the last two items on the agenda for today are policies for first read. And given that the second one is just really an edit of that policy. The first one is substantive. As the board knows, we are in the midst of discussing, not only finalizing the exact details of scope for what project 2 might look like, but as we move into second semester, we will begin to be tackling the financing options of that. And we are in an incredibly fortunate position in this district where it's recently been declared that we have an Imagine Foundation that is going to play a key role in many ways in helping to support financially big capital projects such as project 2 here at the district. And our board policy simply wasn't what it needed to be to help kind of sync with that type of recognition. And so what we see here with policy 880, with the revision that we see attached, is a first read at an effort that adds language into policy 880, specifically noting recognition for the possibility of donations for facilities work at the district. I could break it down in great detail if the board likes. I know the board has read this. There's been some questions kind of offline about this as well. I want to thank the policy committee who gave a first read on this, which at the time, and that was Ralph and Sarah most recently, and gave some important feedback for that. So maybe they have insight they would like to add as well. But what this really does is name kind of from a very high level what commitments the district will make as they move forward with recognition. So I will turn it over for any questions or discussions that the board has.
If I could just chime in for 1 second,
Please.
I would also like to thank Lynn Caminito, who's in the audience, for
Of course.
a lot of very thoughtful conversations around this issue. And she's done a tremendous amount of research, and so she actually she was the person who mentioned it to me, so I don't know if I want to, but I will give you credit, Lynn, for this, because you really had done a ton of research in terms of what other districts were doing and how other folks were handling this and other institutions. And I found that really helpful, just to educate myself on what other folks were doing. So I just wanted to recognize Lynn and thank her for that.
Absolutely, and my horrific error then for not naming my introductory comments, so absolutely.
Questions from other board members?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's so much a question as a comment. It's my understanding that this creates a mechanism, all right, for us to accept from the foundation donations. I guess and it assigns the right to the board. The board can assign the right to a foundation or another group, or I guess individuals to go out and solicit and negotiate those donations. However, the board does maintain it's the final authority. And I do have a couple of kind of concerns, I guess, in reading this. Number one is that revocation. I think revocation at the sole discretion of the board is not tight enough. I think that there has to be some cause for revocation. I mean, if I'm going to be donating a lot of money, and a new board comes in that may have not like my ideology or my haircut.
What's wrong with your hair?
Which one? I think that I don't know if there's a way to make it tighter.
Okay.
But I just think that if political winds flow one way or another, that a new board after 10 years or something wants to make a change, I think there's got to be some kind of reason or cause that's justifiable. Whether if it's somebody, if it's a naming right and that person becomes a liability for actions or previous behavior or something like that, I understand. But to have that really be there and being able to be arbitrary, kind of, that's one thing that concerns me. The other thing is the limitation of 20 years. I think the 20 years, I understand that, but can't that be kind of tied into the amounts? If somebody's giving a substantial amount of money, and I'm not gonna pick a benchmark or a level, but there could be a point where it might be permanency. If somebody wanted to come and fund enough money to rebuild the field house, why wouldn't we name the field house in perpetuity after that person?
But I think
That
you
was
can
kind of-
re-up every 20 years, right? Maybe that's the way to do it, is have a mechanism for like re-upping after 20 years. I mean, I do think, I'm sorry, like keep going. I didn't mean
Yeah, no,
to interrupt you, but
No, that's fine. You can interrupt me anytime. So, I mean, that's just, in the couple of times that I've read this, that kind of, those are the kind of things that really, that stuck out. And then this has nothing to do, I want to make sure, nothing to do with sponsorship. So if we had, a company, Nike, wants to come and sponsor a portion of our athletic programs and provide funding or uniforms or whatever it might be, this is something totally different.
It's exactly right.
Okay.
This is distinct from that, whether you're talking about sponsoring a you know, an invitational or, you know, some sort of major event or something like that, or even advertising is distinct from this.
Right. No, I think obviously I'm all in favor of this. I've watched the school over the years turn down this kind of thing. And I thought it at the point in time when it was done. It was silly not to take the money to put somebody's name on a basketball floor or a scoreboard or something like that. No, I'm all for it, obviously. Huge supporter of the foundation and can't wait to see this move forward.
I like the broad revocation language. I think you're asking for a lawsuit if you start enumerating reasons for a board to revoke. I think it has to be the board's sole discretion, and I think we have to rely on the professionalism of the board. I don't think a board would do such a thing lightly or for political reasons. But the bottom line is, it's impossible to anticipate every reason why you want to revoke that. And trying to create a laundry list is a open invitation for litigation. And I think it should be broad discretion of the board.
And I see litigation on the other side of it too, bro. You're a lawyer, I'm not.
Okay, so
But
I think we have the broad discretion. What are they gonna litigate? The policy says at the sole discretion of the board, they can revoke.
I
Okay,
understand.
you gave the money understanding that.
I'm just wondering if there's some kind of language, if there's something out there. In terms of, the other institutions, I'm sure. They have these kind of policies that that could be inserted. I brought it up for discussion and I understand your opinion, which differs from mine, and I respect that.
No, I mean, that's right. I would support the broader language. I wouldn't support putting in. I just think it's a problem.
Yeah, I am also in support of the language, as broad, that's the elected process, right? I mean, it would take a board that, of a fully elected board. To be elected to come in, and if that board has a different. Direction and agenda, that's the big picture of what, democracy is in this country, as long as it's. Identified as such in the policy, I think that balances.
What I'll do, prior to, this coming back to the board in 2 weeks, this is a kind of a blending of various other policies, various states from all sorts of sources. And, of course, this has been reviewed by our attorneys. And so what I will do is, bring that specific question up, so we really zero in on the exact question brought up here. If I find that there's, if the recommendation is to make some sort of change, I'll make that really transparent. If it's not, I'll clarify that too in 2 weeks. So we're looking at it again. Okay.
I think they're brave on the question too.
Great, please.
Not a question, more just a comment, just to kind of continue this discussion. Excuse me. So regarding our second point you made, Fred, but for the 20 years, I think I like that language just simply because if you look at some of these name rights for stadiums for professional teams, it's not indefinite unless you continue sponsorship and that you have revenue in there, right? So the only way I would see in 20 years, I would see the utility of what was provided, depending on the life of the building, has probably lapsed unless you're going to pay an additional money to continue that building going. So for instance, if we're upgrading a track in 20 years and that's the sponsorship name or somebody get money to it, I don't think unless you continue contributing funds and updating it, and you shouldn't have it on indefinitely. That's just kind of the way I look at it. If you look at how professional teams do it for stadiums and whatnot. So I'm sort of that language. Because again, if you give them money, it's for a limited time period. If you want to continue after that, great. The other point with it's funny as you and Ralph were talking about that broad language for termination. That's very common language I've seen in terms and conditions for like Zelle or these other app companies. So you really have no recourse to say, well, I'm going to sue you guys for canceling it, because you signed the terms and conditions saying they have the sole right to terminate for any reason. And it's so general. And I don't know what stand you would have to take it to a court to say, yeah, I want to sue because you gave me X, Y, and Z. Just my opinion. Again, I'm not an attorney. Just I'm based on what I've seen in other terms, conditions, contracts, or different things I've signed. I think even Google has the same thing, if I'm not mistaken. So if we run about attorneys, I'm fine with the language as it is. I think it makes sense as presented, and I think the more general you are, the better. That protects the future board and current board as well, I think too.
I just think one comment.
Please.
And I think I appreciate Greg's point, I understand it. But I think ultimately we can, sounds like we're gonna proceed more or less likely for the policy as it's written. In 3 years, if people want to donate and these are coming up as issues for them and real concerns, we can revisit it, right? We might be inviting a problem that we're not gonna have eventually. So I think the proof will be in whether the donors, potential donors, are the ones who are objecting to any of this language. Maybe if it seemed like a significant sum of money that we might be passing up on because they didn't like the terms of our policy, maybe we look at it then. But I don't want to assume problems that we might not have.
Okay. So this will be brought to the board. Well, it's been mentioned kind of first read, by the policy committee. It will be presented on the 15th for action as an official first read. Right?
Correct. It's going forward at that point.
At that point. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for the conversation. And I'm just going to jump to the last policy item. This is a mere edit of names. With Janelle Bishop in her new role and assuming the Title I coordinator responsibilities, we wanted to make sure our policy matched our practice. And undoubtedly, there are other places, as we go through that we're going to see a need for similar updates, but it's a new position. So this is a prominent one. So we're bringing this forward for the board as well. Okay.
Questions, comments?
I actually understood that one.
Okay, that concludes our policy section, and we move to future agenda items. So does anyone have any future agenda items to be brought forth? I had one, which I believe I just want to get, which is the review of the evidence-based funding model
That we did for.
that we've done. So now, just so that I get my mind of when we will expect to see that again.
Yeah, your timing is fabulous. Just a few days ago, at our district leadership team meeting, Cindy brought that for us for discussion to discuss the timeline. And we didn't pick an exact board meeting that we would share it, but we will bring that forward to the board in advance of when we bring staffing considerations to the board, so that whatever staffing considerations we bring are going to be in the context of that EDF model. So, and again, just remember the board makes decisions on staffing changes at the March regular board meeting. So we're talking about almost certainly somewhere in the month of February that we be bringing that, but we'll nail that down as we continue to have the conversation. Okay,
Perfect. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Insane.
All confused?